to get through, I will call the person involved with the story. So you know how sometimes you're doing a story and maybe it's about one officer or it's about one department, and yes, there is that PIO that you're supposed to call. I always still, I call them. I find their number through research. I call the department and I'm like, hey, will anyone talk to me? Sometimes I get a call from the PIO and they're like, no, why are you calling them? Lynn, don't do that. It's like, well, but if their name's gonna be used, especially if you're using an officer's name or a teacher's name or any kind of thing, I want to give them their chance to respond. I don't want them to have to respond through someone. So that's one thing. I talked about the whole tweeting to people. And I do this as a last resort. If I've called, if I've emailed and still nothing, I will tweet to them and say, hey, I'm trying to get a hold of you. How can I, will someone please return my call? Lawmakers, a lot of times, actually do respond to this very quickly. That public embarrassment, and with companies, this happens a lot too. Hey, trying to get a hold of someone, I've emailed, I've called, no one's called me back, I have questions for you. And they do get back to you with that. I have a very candid conversation with them on the phone, and I'm like, so you're telling me that no one at this department is going to be able to answer this question? No one's going to answer it. No one knows the answer? And I say, do you really want the public to know that no one knows the answer? I go, come on, someone there knows the answer. And kind of play it off of them, because someone does know the answer. And then if they say, well, someone does it, so I say, okay, so you don't want to tell me? Is that it? Because I'll tell everyone that you don't want to tell me, but I don't think you want, we don't want to go down that line, and do that. I still always email them the questions, and I say, look, I also in writing will put a request for an interview in writing so they can respond to it and say no in the email. So we can then use that for video on air. I also then will call and I will record, like the reporter calling and asking for the interview. And then let's say still, they won't agree to the interview. They're like, no, we're not talking to you about this. At that point, if we've, kind of excluded all options, you can always catch them outside of a meeting, ask for their schedule. That's kind of last resort, those unscheduled interviews. But then also still, if you want those questions and they're not going to answer them, I will sometimes then say, hey, look, this is what we've been trying to talk to you about. We are now submitting this question to you. We want an answer. And we see what their response is. And, obviously we'd much rather talk to them on camera. But still for some reason putting that in, the fact of just submitting that question, then you've asked it. They have it and they're now just ignoring it.